German, Dutch, Spanish, Arabic, Mandarin, Japanese, and Indonesian. Voice of Indonesia is broadcast by shortwave 3325 kHz and 4755 kHz and via streaming on voanews.id and RRI Digital on mobile application. We present various programs for you. Diplomatic Forum, The Session, Indonesian Wonder, Miscellany, Let's Speak Bahasa Indonesia, Indonesian pop and regional songs, international musical entertainment, as well as news and information about Indonesia and abroad. Voice of Indonesia, from Indonesia to the world.
Voice of Indonesia from Indonesia to the world. VOA listeners and viewers, in collaboration with the Overseas Indonesian Students Association Alliance of the America and Europe region, today's VOA Talk will take you to a country in Central Europe, namely Hungary. A country in Central Europe known for its rich history, beautiful architecture, and strong cultural identity. Coming from a country rich in diversity, how does an Indonesian student living with harmony in Hungary? Let's find out more with Syamil Rizqy Hadi, a student in Blati Otto Titus IT Secondary School. Hello, Syamil. Good afternoon from Jakarta, Indonesia.
Hello, good afternoon. Good morning from Budapest, Hungary.
So, Syamil, how is Hungary today?
Hungary is calm, good right now, but right now we have parliament election, so it's a little bit, yeah.
Kind of busy day today in Hungary. Okay. While here in Jakarta is seen so cloudy, but hopefully we keep shining and that excited to share insights about how to live in harmony as an Indonesian in Hungary. So, Syamil, as a student in the secondary school, I would like to know what has been the most interesting part of your experience living in Hungary?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Yeah, I think one of the most interesting about being in Indonesia, living in Hungary, is really the cultural difference that I experience almost every day. Back in Indonesia, we're usually very warm, expressive, and also quiet, spontaneous. For example, sometimes we just suddenly make plans like calling a friend a few hours before and just go hang out. But here in Hungary, it's quite different. The people are much more prepared and structured. If they want to meet, they usually plan it a few days before, not suddenly. At first, I was a bit surprised and honestly needed a time to adjust. But over time, I start to understand and actually experience this habit. It taught me to be more disciplined, more organized, and also more respectful of other people's time. And I think that's sometimes very valuable because not just culture, but also about personal growth and how I see things differently now.
Wow, I am surprised as well. Yes, indeed, teach us discipline. So there is no like, okay, I'm on the way right now, or we cannot make a sudden appointment there.
Yeah.
Okay, and during your time there, have you come across any Hungarian traditions or cultural habits that you find particularly interesting or even similar with the one in Indonesia?
Yeah, I think Hungarian culture is really interesting, especially is because they have a strong sense of identity and tradition. One thing I really noticed is how they preserve their culture, whether it's through food or celebration or even though the buildings and architecture. When you walk around, especially in Budapest, you can really feel the history. And actually, in some ways it reminds me of Indonesia. Even though our culture are very different, countries really value their tradition and heritage. In Indonesia, we also have many cultures, language, and tradition, and we are very proud of that. Also, even though Hungarian people might seem a bit more reserved at first, once you get to know them, they can very warm and friendly, which reminds me a bit of Indonesia hospitality. So I think even if we are different, we still share some similar values.
Okay, and what about the architecture specifically?
It's like it's classic architecture and historical. Those are so good.
Okay, remains a historical in its own way. Okay. And now from culture, we talk about like the daily one, talking about life, raising children. Any similarities or perhaps differences do you observe between Indonesian and Hungarian approaches?
From what I observe, there are some interesting difference in how children are raised in Hungary compared to Indonesia. In Hungary, children are very encouraged to be more independent from a young age. They are taught to take responsibility, manage time, and also express their opinions more openly. Meanwhile, in Indonesia, I think approach more family-oriented children grow up in the warm, supportive environment, and families are usually very close and protective. Personally, I think both approach have their own strengths. The Hungarian way helps build independence and confidence, while the Indonesian way builds a strong emotional connection and social value. So ideally, I think combining both will be best approach, being independent but still having a strong family values.
Okay. And what about the school's environment?
For me, what makes a school environment in Hungary is enjoyable and effective is that focus a lot of building character, not just academics. What I really notice is the discipline taken very seriously here. Student are expected to be time, prepare and responsible for their work. It's still not just a rule, but it's become a part of a daily habit. And I think that's very important because when students have a strong character, like discipline and responsibility, learning becomes much more easier than and more effective. That's why I feel like many students here can perform well academically, not just because they study hard. They have a good personality and they have right mindset. In Indonesia, we also have a strong values like respect, politeness, and teamwork. But here in Hungary, I feel like focus on discipline and character building is more consistently applied in daily school life. Personally, I really like the system because I believe that character is just important as knowledge, maybe even more important and a long term.
Okay. Is the character development, character building is in the curriculum, not only academic skills?
Yeah, we focus more on like building character, like the responsibility, discipline.
Okay, then. And as part of the Indonesian diaspora, now we're talking about Indonesian overseas. How do you introduce Indonesia, its culture, cuisine, tourism, and many more to the Hungarians?
Yeah, as part in Indonesia diaspora, I usually introduce Indonesia culture in simple and natural ways. Most of the time, I start from conversation. When people ask me where from I say Indonesia, and then like usually got curious. One of the easiest way to try food, Indonesian food is very rich in spices, flavor. So people are usually very interested when I talk about it. For example, I often talk about Indonesian food like rendang. They're usually surprised because it's very different from European food. Besides food, uh, I also talk about the general, like our tradition, culture, and tourism. Indonesia has so many beautiful places, so it's always interesting to talk about. Even simple conversation like that can help people understand Indonesian better.
Oh, even the language.
Yeah.
Okay. And talking about food, have they tasted Indonesian food?
Some of my friends introduced him some Indonesian restaurant like rendang, ayam geprek, something like that.
Okay, so they are that surprised with the spice.
Yeah.
Okay, and could you share a memorable experience from promoting Indonesian culture in Hungary and through events, community activities, or cultural initiatives?
One of the most memorable experience for me is actually from a simple daily interaction. Whenever I tell people that I'm from Indonesia, they usually say, "Oh, Bali, you from Bali?" And I always find that funny but also interesting. It shows that Indonesian already know, even if mostly from Bali. So from there, I usually continue to the conversation and explain that Indonesia is much more than just a Bali. We have many island culture and tradition. Another memorable moment is when I talk about Indonesian food, especially rendang. People get really curious because it's different from European. So yeah.
Okay, any upcoming events in the future?
Yeah, we have like Indonesian event, and I usually invite all my friends to show the Indonesian cultures there.
Okay, then. And Syamil, talking about Hungary, so if people visit Hungary, what places that you recommend to visit? As we previously talked about the architectural places.
I will first of all show them the parliament. That's like one of the biggest parliament in the world. It's called
Oh,
Parliament Budapest, Hungary. And the architect is really good, really beautiful. And maybe I will show them the Buddha Castle or the Fisherman. That's our like the most Budapest sites or Hungarian sites.
okay, the parliament is the biggest in the world.
Yeah, the
Oh,
biggest in the world.
okay. And sorry that we go back to the parliament, the elections issue. Could you share about today's highlights in the political situation following today's elections,
Yeah,
especially about from the youth?
so there's have two parties are strong right now. It's called Fidesz and TISA, and they were very good parties. And the list one is Fidesz, and one of the biggest parties right now is TISA. So most Hungarian people think TISA will win this parliament election.
Okay, and they say there is also a demonstration of youth communities as well.
Yeah, I heard about that too.
Okay, and what like you see from the youth's voice regarding this election?
Mm, that's actually interesting because every day when the posters are everywhere in the street right now, like there's a lot of parties to try to make them win the election, so it's quite busy.
Okay, then hopefully the local Hungarian youths can show their voice as the youth, and also today's election can run well. And finally, could you describe how to live in Hungary in harmony as an Indonesian, but in short, 3 words, Syamil?
3 words.
Yes.
I will say first, structure, challenging, and eye-opening.
Okay, thank you so much, Syamil, Rizqy, Hadi, a student in Hungary, how to live with harmony as an Indonesian in Hungary, and keep promoting, keep introducing Indonesia in Hungary and the world. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Have a good day.
Have a good day. Thank you.
Well, VOA listener, that's Syamil, Rizqy, Hadi talking about living with harmony as an Indonesian in Hungary. Stay tuned for more insightful talks with the Overseas Indonesian Students Association Alliance of the America and Europe region only on Voice of Indonesia, from Indonesia to the world.
Voice of Indonesia, the overseas service of Radio Republic Indonesia, broadcast in 9 language services: English, French, German, Dutch, Spanish, Arabic, Mandarin, Japanese, and Indonesian. Voice of Indonesia is broadcast by shortwave 3325 kHz and 47